Hey YouTube, welcome back to my kitchen. Tonight I'm going to be making creamy mac and cheese from scratch to go as a side with dinner, so I happened to think as I was deciding to make it creamy tonight that I would film it as a video because I don't think many people have heard of this method. So I hope you like this video, and let me get set up and we'll get started. First I wanted to show you what kind of cheeses we're going to be using for the mac and cheese. I'm actually using home smoked cheddar for the first time tonight in this recipe, and I wanted to show you the difference in color. So these are actually the same type of cheese, same brand, exact same. You can see the difference in color. This one is smoked and this one is not raw, but this is from the store, and my husband smoked a couple of blocks over the weekend and we snacked on it a little bit. It's absolutely delicious. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of the smoked cheddar on top as well, but I'll go ahead and get these shredded and we'll go from there. So of the smoked cheese, I have probably about a cup or maybe 3/4 of a cup, and then this is probably about 1 3/4 to 2 cups of regular cheddar. Alright, now I'm going to put a medium saucepan on to boil with heavily salted water, and I mean heavily salted. I would recommend that you taste the water before you put your noodles in to see if it's as salty as you remember the sea. That is recommended by the book Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, which I also mentioned in my chicken cutting video. I'll put a link to the book in the description. But I think there's probably a lot of people that undersalt their water when they're boiling it, so I would definitely recommend, if you haven't tasted your water lately, that you give that a try and see how it is. And then also something to note about this is when you add your noodles, you want there to just be enough water to cover the noodles with a little bit extra, but you don't want a ton of extra water because you want a high concentration of starch from the noodles to end up in the water. We're going to use this to thicken our cheese sauce later, so if there's too much water you may have to boil more out because you need all that starch. If you haven't preheated your oven, now is a great time to do that. I put mine this time on 375 because really we're just trying to melt the cheese on top and maybe give it a little crispness to the cheese that we're going to top it with. A good boil going on my water, so I'm going to add about 1.5 cups of elbow macaroni for 2 people. We'll probably have a little bit leftovers. And then stir immediately so that it doesn't stick. Getting foggy. And I'll put the lid back on here just for a few minutes. We'll cook the noodles according to the directions on the package, and then once they're done, we will reserve some of the liquid and we'll make the sauce. We're going to drain our noodles into a bowl in the sink, and I'll keep the noodles in the colander until I'm ready to add them to the sauce. This recipe was actually inspired by a story about the original Alfredo sauce, and I just am substituting the Parmesan for cheddar, and it works great. Here I am adding some cheddar to melted butter and just kind of starting the melting process. It doesn't need to melt completely, and if at any time you start to have the fat and the liquid separate, that means your heat is too high. You need to turn it down and add some cool water. And I'm just sort of helping the cheese to melt by adding the pasta water. This is mustard powder and paprika. Stir that really well to combine. And once it's gotten a little bit thicker, we'll be ready to add the noodles back to the sauce. Look at that stringy cheese. Alright, I've dumped all the noodles and the cheese sauce into my baking dish, If you're worried about it sticking, you can also butter the dish, but this has so much fat in the cheese and butter, I didn't really have a problem with it this time. And I'm just covering it with a good amount of the regular cheddar and some of the smoked cheddar. And I'll bake this at 375 for 15 to 20 minutes or until the cheese is to your liking. Save that leftover pasta water in the freezer for another use.